all of the challenges that you laid out are still there. There's still the property bubble that they're dealing with. There's still the weakened sentiment. There's still the sort of overhang of the COVID pandemic lockdowns and recovering sentiment and animal spirits. All of that is still very much there. But I think what has lit a fire under Chinese people's sort of sense of consumer sentiment and economic nationalism has been this trade war with the United States. And it's been kind of conveniently timed from Beijing's perspective to kind of distract attention from those problems and really draw a lot of unity around this idea of standing strong in the face of this U.S. trade war and these massive tariffs.
Talk a little bit more about just what makes Chinese consumers, manufacturers excited in this environment. What is there to rally around?
I think it's less excitement so much as in Chinese you would say 吃苦 or eating bitter, like being prepared to kind of dig their heels in and hold out in the face of what they see is U.S. aggression in the form of this trade war, right? From Beijing's perspective, from the Chinese people's perspective, they didn't do anything. The U.S. just kept ratcheting up tariffs, and now we're at unprecedented high levels. I think people are sober about the fact that this is going to cause a lot of economic pain at home, especially at a time of economic weakness for China. But at the same time, they're not willing to kind of engage with the idea of looking weak in the face of that. And so that's what I think is this rally around the flag phenomenon that we're seeing and that the piece talked about.
One question that I still don't know the answer to is who has the cards in this negotiation? On the one hand, the U.S. consumer is incredibly powerful, and no question China wants access to the consumer. Speaking of that, we love to buy things. Those things often come from China. Who has the power here?
I think in a sense, everybody loses. I think it's a question of
that's not good.
Time frames, right? For example, from the U.S. perspective, those prices are going to start to hit a pretty dramatic spike once the stockpiling and other kind of advanced efforts that we saw ahead of these tariffs coming into play start to run out. And now companies have to deal with the tariffs themselves, right? I think the other question is a political question, right? Of, again, from China's perspective, they didn't start this trade war. They're on the kind of receiving end of it, and that's allowing them to dig their heels in a little bit. I think a lot of Americans feel like, sure, we knew President Trump was going to do tariffs at some point. He was talking about that pretty frankly on the campaign trail. This isn't necessarily the trade war that Americans wanted, right? And so
145% tariffs on China.
On your largest source of goods, right? And I think the pain when it starts to hit in a month or two from now when those stockpiles run out, then the key question is who has sort of the political will to withstand that economic pain. But to be clear, the economic pain for China is going to be very tough, especially if the U.S. is successful in convincing other countries not to let those Chinese goods just flow through other markets.
So what is the Chinese government's role here, I guess, in shaping public opinion within China?
So we saw the propaganda machine go into overdrive pretty soon after Liberation Day, facing in two fronts. The internal front, building up that China nationalist sentiment, which, again, they had a little bit of an easy role to play in that because the people were already predisposed to being upset at the United States, but also externally taking advantage of Liberation Day tariffs to say to the rest of the world, the U.S. is not a reliable partner. Work with us. Don't work with the U.S. to counter us. And let's join up on sides. Now, I think that effort's going to be a lot more difficult in this 90-day pause where if I'm Vietnam, I'm enjoying right now a pretty good tariff differential with China.
When you were saying external PR, I thought you were going to talk about those videos that went viral of like the AI-generated Americans actually making things.
There's that. There's the sort of like peace in our time video.
Yeah, everybody saw those. Yeah. Everybody saw those.
Like very overweight people like making.
Yes, they've got a very effective AI video generation scheme over there.